The wreck of the Mary Rose has started to come down on itself as the Tudor flagship's vast wooden beams have begun to shift, according to the ship's conservation manager. The vessel, Henry VI's flagship, was removed from the seabed 35 years ago and rests in a climatically controlled box in Portsmouth, where conservation experts are removing the water and replacing it with a special polymer. However, the drying process, which started in 2013, has caused unwanted movement, which they are now monitoring with special cameras as they try to prop up the ship using scaffolding. The vessel, Henry VI's flagship, went on display in the newly revamped Mary Rose Museum exactly 471 years after it perished in the Solent, just outside Portsmouth Harbour, on July 19, 1545. After it was taken out of the water, the ship was initially sprayed with water and waxed to stop it rotting. 4 years ago they started the drying process, which is now mostly complete. However, although we put enough of the polymer in so that there is some stability, that is not to say there is not going to be any change or any movement, Dr. Eleanor Sheffield, conservation manager for the Mary Rose, told New Scientist Live in London. We only have one half of the hull, so the deck beams are not attached to anything on the other side. If you look very closely, you will see there is scaffolding in places that we have had to install because there has this movement. We've also had various laser scans done on the hull, and we're using those to understand the movement. We have a cross-section of the hull, and you can see through the years the hull has started to come down on itself, and the deck beam has twisted since we're not spraying anymore. Dr. Sheffield's speech prompted reports yesterday that the ship was about to collapse, but the Mary Rose Museum at Portsmouth said these reports are inaccurate, although she would require a new support system. As with any type of wetwood, the Mary Rose's timbers have shrunk as she has dried, and this has led inevitably to some cracks. Talking in July 2016 after it was first unveiled to the public, historian David Starkey said, "For the first time we can actually see the Mary Rose. Up to this point, from the moment it was brought up in the 1980s, it has been in a state of both being preserved and conserved, and to do that it had to be covered by sprays, it had to be put in a huge bag like a condom, and then it had to be dried. And while all that went on, there were obstacles between you, the visitor, and the ship. Now all of that has been taken away, and you can see the thing. It's there. It's a three-dimensional object." Helen Bonser-Wilton, chief executive of the Mary Rose Trust, said in 2016 it had been a very exciting close to the latest chapter in her history. "Visitors will have stunning panoramic views of the ship from all 9 galleries," she said. "This is the culmination of decades of hard work by the Mary Rose team, and we can't wait to share this stunning new experience with everyone." The Mary Rose, a 16th-century warship, sank in battle with the French, killing more than 500 men. Incredibly, the starboard hull remained intact by being embedded in mud on the seabed, which prevented it from being eroded by tides and bacteria. In total, 19,000 items were carefully retrieved, including the bones of sailors, a dog called Hatch, and other artifacts from the wreckage. Since being raised in 1982, an event watched by 60 million viewers worldwide, the hull has been kept in highly protective surroundings. for decades, it was constantly coated with millions of liters of finely sprayed, fresh water at a temperature of less than 5 degrees centigrade, 41 degrees Fahrenheit. That process, along with a series of wax chemicals, were used to stop the wood drying out and to inhibit bacterial activity. Then, in 1985, the ship was turned upright and titanium props were installed to support the internal structure, and work was undertaken to remove as much sediment as possible. From 1994, active conservation commenced with the spraying of polyethylene glycol, PEG, a water-soluble polymer which can penetrate deep into the wood and support the cell walls. Then, in April 2013, the PEG sprays were turned off, and the hull was kept in a state of controlled air drying phase 100 tons of water during the next 4 to 5 years. Once drying was complete, the internal walls surrounding the hull were removed, so visitors would be able to see a completely unobstructed view of the hull, a phase that was seen as the culmination of the project. Small viewing panels were replaced with floor-to-ceiling windows, and a balcony entered through an airlock, so the ship can be seen in all its glory. Sir Peter Luff, chairman of the Heritage Lottery Fund, which granted £26 million ($35 million) towards the project, said, quite simply, "The Mary Rose is awe-inspiring." After decades of hard work, this final part of the conservation jigsaw brings the Mary Rose back into clear focus and spectacular context. Also included in the display is the red rose figurehead which adorned the famous ship. The carved Tudor rose, the earliest English figurehead representing the ship's name, was retrieved from the bottom of the Solent more than a decade ago as a small piece of wood. The conserved artifact, which still has its carvings despite years of erosion while languishing in the silt of the sea, has now been officially identified as the flower which was fixed to the bow of the Mary Rose. The rose was found in 2003 after a group of divers working on a Ministry of Defense excavation made what would transpire to be a hugely historic discovery. The divers had been searching the area for the ship's bow castle, and we were trying to raise the Tudor ship stem and anchor after the government applied to widen and straighten the channel. As these pieces were being prepared for lifting, the divers came across a carved wooden artifact, which was about 4 feet long and shaped like a lollipop. Unsure what it was, the wood was raised and put into a water tank at the Mary Rose Museum, where it was kept without investigation. But, more than a decade on, it has now been properly identified as the ship's emblem. This year, the Mary Rose Trust asked the University of Portsmouth for help to enhance the carvings to see what was there. Experts then used a series of techniques including laser scanning, computer modeling and 3D rendering to produce a digital image of the rose, depicting how it could have looked. Another impression of how it might have looked is from the Anthony roll, the only detailed surviving depiction of the ship, which shows the Tudor rose mounted on the forecastle. The museum said the combination of its size, its form and the position where it was found leaves very little doubt that this is the Tudor rose emblem shown in the Anthony roll, and therefore the first English warship figurehead that was carved to represent the name of the ship.